after that Mass, I felt this indescribable joy that this was the most loving thing I could ever do with my life. I might have been unworthy of it, but it certainly was the greatest act of love I could do. And I was so happy. And I said, no regrets. No regrets.
Welcome to Not the Last Word, a Catholic podcast on finding one's path through stories from inspiring people. Every episode, we interview a person who has found a calling, mission, or vocation and listen to their stories about the adventure. This podcast is produced by the Santuario de San Antonio Parish's Social Communications Ministry with volunteers from the Single Young Adults community. I'm Clara Gomez, and for this first podcast episode, JJ Yulo and I have a wonderful conversation with Father Luis Lorenzo on his journey to the priesthood. Some of you may know Father Luis from his work with young people, particularly as the part-time chaplain of Ateneo de Manila University and the chaplain of De La Salle University. Father Luis is a priest of the Legionaries of Christ. Some would say he is a young priest, in that he has been a priest for almost 5 years now, but also because he is still in his 30s. In this conversation, Father Luis gets very real with us on what it's like being a priest and his path, one that wasn't always clear to him. At 18, while studying in the US, he encountered a remarkable group of young seminarians and priests, and this encounter led him to take a leap of faith and to answer the call to the priesthood. We talked about this and the many people and events that shaped his journey and the joys and challenges of being a missionary priest. There is so much in his story that we were surprised by, but not surprising to anyone who knows him is his infectious joy and his passion for service.
Hey, welcome to our podcast. My name is JJ.
And I'm Clar.
And this is the Not the Last Word podcast. And today we have a special guest for you for the very first podcast, which is quite exciting. We have a famous young priest. His name, he is famous. Here he is famous. He's shaking his head. His name is Father Luis Lorenzo of the Legionaries of Christ. Hello, Father Luis.
Hello.
Not be conscious, ah. This is just a free-flowing conversation.
Well, I guess to start things off, Father, if you could tell us about yourself in general and what order you belong to, since I'm sure people are wondering, what's the Legionaries of Christ?
Well, I'm Father Luis Lorenzo. I am an almost 5-year-old priest, and I belong to the Legionaries of Christ, which is a religious congregation in the Catholic Church for priests and those who are on their way to becoming priests. So we don't have religious brothers in our order, but we are all priests. And our mission is to build the kingdom of Christ in the world by forming servant leaders and apostles of the new evangelization throughout the world. Concretely, I help form young people to be the Christian leaders they're called to be, to make an impact in society. That's my specific role.
Okay, for those of you listening, by the way, this is a pretty free-form podcast, all right? So it's very casual also. So we're going to deep dive into the life of Father Luis here. And also his just the way he does things, right, Clar? It's going to be fun, actually. So
There's a lot to unpack in just the first few things Father Luis said.
Definitely. So maybe Father Lou, let's start from the very beginning, like your childhood and everything. I'm curious what kind of childhood one has on the road to becoming a priest.
Sure, where would you want me to start?
Just talk about, how you were with your family. What was it like with your family growing up? Was it a particularly deeply Catholic family or a rambunctious childhood like a lot of other, like I had, running around and just, being a kid and all that? Because I guess what we're trying to unearth here is, did it help you form your thoughts? Did it help you push you on that path towards being a priest? Did you know as a kid, well, maybe there's something in me like, oh, I would like to.
Yeah. Did you always know you wanted to be a
to
priest?
get to know God more? Yeah, something like that.
Right. Yes, sige. I think from a very early age, the priesthood was always a possibility for me, simply because my parents love to invite to our home seminarians and priests and even nuns. As early as I can remember, 5 years old, maybe we would have every few months a religious or priest over. And of course, me growing up, oh, that's a possible um, path for one. Describing my family, we were very traditionally Catholic, devotional, daily rosary, Sunday mass goers. And my mom in particular had a strong devotion to Mama Mary. And ever since I remember we were 3 years old, she already taught us how to speak to Mama Mary. To our Lord, not so much until we were older, with your first communion and then your, Catholic school formation. That's where a relationship with Jesus developed, but really Mama Mary from the start. And I guess, speaking of being morally conscious and upright, my parents always tried to raise us children as charitable, respectful, honest, hardworking. Not that we were always like that, but they set the standard, I guess, at home.
So as a little
Yeah.
boy, you already like you were praying the rosary a lot and every day, yeah.
Tried. Our
Tried?
parents tried to force us. Yeah, really against
I used to
out
fall
of
asleep.
obedience. Yeah.
I still do sometimes.
Sometimes I do too.
Yes. Yun, so traditional Catholic family, I guess, growing up. Yeah.
You also went to Catholic school.
I did. I did. I went to Xavier in San Juan for elementary, and then Ateneo High School. So really, yeah, those years of a Jesuit Catholic education really marked, my value for the faith. But maybe I can mention also one thing I've realized now, being a priest for 5 years. It's the priesthood isn't all just about piety. People say, "Oh, ang banal mo, okay, magpari ka." No, that's not enough. That's not enough. There has to be a great sense of service and looking out for others, which I think really resonated with me being the kuya of the family. So I was very strong in my family. Ikaw yung kuya, ako dapat ang mag-alaga sa lahat kung wala na kami. Also set a good example. Work hard, study hard. So being a kuya, I think, is what reinforced the vocation as well.
I honestly think at this point, because I actually gave it a thought already, that there are many dimensions to being a priest. Yeah.
Mm.
Because like growing up, for me, it was when I see a priest, I'm like, oh god, this guy is super holy, and I know
There's like a
I kind of
personality
cubbyhole
type
you.
for it.
Yeah, you're probably an altar boy, and you're probably and all this and all that. But there's so much to it, right? It's not just that, and that's interesting, because I don't think. Definitely, I haven't heard stories about that, the other dimensions, and I'm sure our listeners would like to hear about
Know
that.
more
as
about
well.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Out of curiosity, as a Jesuit, I went to Jesuit schools. I went to Xavier also. What would you say was the greatest mark that they left on you?
To really shoot for the stars. That impossible dream, that greater scheme of things, as the song goes by Father Johnny Go, it's that your life was made for something greater. And the greatest thing you can do with your life is to discover what God plans for you, right? The purpose for which you were born. And that was ever since in grade school, high school. That a greatness that was not self-centered, but actually more to glorify the Lord. Yeah, I think that's the greatest.
Sense of mission.
Sense of
Sense of
mission.
mission.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very Jesuit.
Man for others,
Man for
Man for
others.
others. Yeah.
Very Jesuit.
What do you with the whole thinking about the greater scheme of things, is that something you see in hindsight for your younger self, or when you were young, were you already asking yourself that question, like from Xavier and Ateneo years?
It never sunk in really till I was about 17. Yeah, of course you were taught that every year, but not till I was preparing for college, applying to schools. So funny thing, I applied to 8 universities worldwide, and all 8 with 8 different courses. It wasn't clear for me, but I was searching. I was looking for what would be that lifelong path. So college would be the step to that. But
So out of curiosity, what were those 8? What were the other alternative realities that could have happened to you?
courses or schools? No, baka courses na lang.
Sure,
Yeah.
courses.
So sociology, political science, history, theology, of course, ano pa? Business, the management program in Ateneo, for example. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Out of curiosity, though, I'm more curious about late high school and college because that's when a young person is most into their youth, I guess. So what was that like? Were you?
Oh,
Did you? I mean, did you hit the clubs? Did you? did you? Did you play a lot of sports? Did you? I don't know. Because usually at that, but you're trying to figure yourself out and all that, and that's usually the time you start exploring and meeting people and stuff like that. So what was that like?
until today, I think they were the happiest years of my youth. We're still young, right? Happiest years of my younger years. Because everything was flourishing, everything was colorful. So yes, I did play sports. I played football for Ateneo in my last 2 years of high school. I loved it. We went to the Palarong Pambansa. We won. Football.
Oh, you're in the varsity squad.
Yes.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. Until today, it's still my passion.
Okay.
Still get to play with alumni and friends. That occupied really most of my week aside from studying. So you go to school around 4:30 in the morning, do your training, right? And then the next day you have training in the afternoon, in the evening, and then your weekends have games. So, people ask me, do you ever have a girlfriend? I go, yes, her name was football. Because the time, the dedication, and then striving for that gold. So football was one. I had a good social life. No, I loved going to.
Nagsporay ka rin.
Of course, yeah, and of course those are the years of your junior proms and your
Right.
senior balls, right? And I'm not sure, but the experience of someone in an all boys school all his life, really, those are the years where you're getting to know girls, right? So any invitation, you go. So I started to make more friends in that area. No, never committing because of football. School life was good. Made more friends in high school. Until today, actually, the neat thing is they ask you to marry them and their spouses or baptize their children or, sadly, the other day, one of my friends' father passed. No, so I did also the service for that one. So really, I think a very happy last 2 years of high school, entering college, and maybe to add, very strong in the service outreach area. That's when Ateneo really invites us to come out of our comfort zone and go to poor communities, TD, Banlao. So really exposure to the country's needs. Hence political science. Hence wanting to enter government
Sorry.
one day.
For a non-Jesuit person, what were those things? TD, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, Banlao is something offered in third year high school when we go live with a poor community for 3 days, and we're not allowed to tell them anything about ourselves, but simply to immerse and to really become part of their homes, and it's really so that we forget about ourselves and really enter into their lives. It was really very touching because at the end of that visit, my foster family cried, because they didn't really know who I was or where I came from, but they felt the solidarity of a boy from Manila who lived with them. So very moving also for me. TD is a year-long program of tutoring English and math to public school students. So I taught math as a math tutor in a public school in Marikina.
I read somewhere, I did an interview somewhere, and you said that you wanted to be president at one point. What was that about?
When I was 7 years old, there was a club in school called Munting Barangay. I don't know why I ended up in it, but it's what sparked me to kind of want to be a servant leader for a community. And of course, in my innocence, I want to be president of the country, right? But as I got older, I realized that is quite a feat to become one, and you're not really in control of actually being in that position. But still, that sense of nationalism and wanting to change our country for the better remains and has remained. By the way, I wanted to say that because if I weren't a priest, I'd probably be in some form of public service. Yeah. So that's
Anything sparked that? I mean, was there an event, a person, something you've seen or heard?
Throughout the years, not necessarily. I mean, my father went into government at some point, but I don't think it was just him. I think it was really a love for our fellow Filipinos here, and seeing the growing disparity of those who have and those who don't, and the uneducated and those who are educated. So I guess it's just a natural growing love for our country.
Yeah, some have it stronger than others. So good for you.
Maybe I can add, Ateneo helped me with that.
Okay. Sure.
Actually, until today, one of the priests I look up to and appreciate is Father Ben Nebres. I don't know if you've heard of Father Ben, but whenever we chat, it's always about how our country's doing and what we can do as priests to serve the country. So, yeah. So, Ateneo
It's
helped
a
me.
long conversation too. I
Yes.
mean, where do we
It's the second podcast.
where do we start, right? Where do we start? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something I even ask myself and friends. I mean, where do you start in this jumble of things? Where do you begin, right? There's so many things to.
I guess the other things, which I think Ateneo teaches you, but how do you retain your hope, which I think a lot of young people ask nowadays, and I'm sure you asked that question at some point. I mean, politics has always been an issue in this country.
Yes. It's a hard question.
It is
That's a hard question. Yeah.
And really, well, I don't know if you want me to answer the question, but I'll answer it
I'm
anyway.
sure, yes.
It's you. It's you. So are you becoming the person that you wish this country would have? That this country would be proud of, right? How you are, how you live, your example, the words you say, how you're developing your talents, and for the sake of service. No, it's you, and I think that's where the change starts. No, and then hopefully you touch someone's life and someone else's life, and at least that's my approach, personal approach. The macro approach is very risky because I don't know, it doesn't go very deep when you try.
It seems like because you were surrounded by great influences, your education was good, you had sports and all that. But I'm sure, just like everyone else, there were stumbling blocks along the way. So, what do you think was? Give us an example of maybe your bigger challenges, like your roadblocks to going down that path that you were choosing as a young guy.
The bigger roadblocks came actually in formation in the seminary.
I see.
So I can share that because that's a 13-year journey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh,
Wait, sorry. Did you enter straight out of school?
yes.
You went. Wow.
Oh, you
Okay.
did.
Okay.
But it's providential because I went to the States for college. One of the universities I applied to accepted me, so I went there for schooling. But I met my order there as an incoming freshman, and they invited me to the seminary just for a weekend. And I was so impressed by what I saw that I said, "This is too good to leave for another 4 years." And they accepted at that time high school graduates because anyway they put you through school to get your own degrees as well. So that's why I entered at
Oh.
18.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
What was that made you really just make that decision? I mean, it's at 18, it's kind of a big decision, right?
Yes. Well, the one thing that kept me from answering the call here in the Philippines was I never really had encounters with young brothers or fathers. No,
Yeah.
here in the country I would always meet priests in their 70s and nothing against that, but when you're only 18, it's too far. It's too big of a leap. But when I went to the States, I met seminarians who were 20, 21, 22, and from all over the world. Italians, Germans, Spaniards, Koreans, Mexicans, and all very welcoming to me, very kind. They love football. That was the common sport. But also they had a dream that they were leaving everything behind for God and for the church and for souls, right? To save souls. Now looking back, I say, bakit pa ako pumasok? Bakit ano yung nag-inspire sa akin? No? Then I realized it's that life isn't all there is. There is an afterlife, and I know that not everybody makes it because of darkness, because of sin, because if everybody made it, then why become a priest, right? Doesn't you? But people need help, right? So, and I felt that fire in these young men. I said, I want to be a part of this. I want to join. And they were normal, talented, bright, noble.
What was attractive about the order was their, I guess, the commitment to the mission, and that sparked something in you. How did your parents react to that? I'm curious.
This I'll never forget. Everyone was shocked, speechless, and all my siblings cried, as in on the phone, because I called them from the seminary, and I could hear the weeping and the question, why don't.
But you were in the seminary already, right?
But I was just visiting.
Okay.
But it was such a.
Oh, you decided when you
I
visited?
decided. I mean, of course, I'd come back to my family, but
Sure.
I was about to, in a sense, sign the papers. No?
Right.
Apply, send up. It was a shock because, as I said, I'm the kuya. So my siblings, until today, always see me as the one who looks after them. My mom was speechless. My father was speechless, right? First eldest son, etc. So it was a leap of faith. But there was enough trust in my parents that I wasn't being fooled, misled, and that I had a good heart. I mean, whatever that means, but they were allowing me to do it, which I know not all parents do that.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I think it was also a grace from God that helped my parents let me. But, for the next 13 years, they would always ask me, are you really sure you can always come home? Especially in my order, which is a missionary order, we get reassigned every 3 years.
Oh, wow.
So from the States, went to Mexico. Mexico went back to the States, and then to Italy, and then now Manila, Philippines. So, yeah, it's a
It's a nomadic.
yeah.
It's a nomadic order. Would you say? ish,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
To go where
part of
there's need.
That's part of your vow. You have to just obey.
Yeah, obedience. Yeah. And to go where you're sent.
Sorry. So your post now is just for a few years? Is that it? Or if they decide, or not necessarily?
My post now is just for a few years, but you can be renewed
So
here.
yeah.
So
Well, just like the other priests, I guess,
I
right?
guess.
Yeah.
yeah, diocesan priests get moved around every 6 years.
Yeah.
Right? They don't stay in the same location. So I'm on my 5th year here. So next year I'll be up for either renewal or transfer.
Is that hard?
Is it hard? Yes and no. I have a big heart, so I love everyone I meet in the sense that they really become a part of your journey and you value them as much as you can. So leaving them, you'll feel it. Right? But again, at the end of the day, it's God who's working in your life. So as long as He's the one we're following, it'll all be okay. So yes and no.
But yeah, I guess there's also a human factor. I mean, anytime you get uprooted from something and then you get sent to, let's say, I don't know, some far-flung place in
Yes.
some part of the world you've never. That's always a little daunting, I guess. But well, I'm guessing obviously that's also where your faith comes in. That you trust in the plan, and this is where I'm supposed to be, right? Which is why you're a priest and I'm not. Because I don't know if I would be as accepting as you.
So in those
Yeah.
13 years, where did you ever have doubts and like think of maybe I should go home?
There's the question.
Yeah.
Thanks, Clar. Actually, this is the question I really wanted to answer
Okay.
because it's so true, and I had many moments of questioning, especially because every 3 years you renew your vows, right? So after first 2 years you do your vows, 3 years after that renew your vows. So you're always asking yourself. But there were 2 moments that I can share, which really jolted me. The first moment was halfway through. It was in my 6th year when I was really immersed in the apostolate. So stop studies first, really work with people. And I was a younger man then, 26, prime, more or less. And I had a lot of interactions with girls, right, in the apostolate, and they're more or less your age, right? So the thought was, I'm never gonna get married. It hit me hard. And I said, what do I do? I can still leave. It's not too late. No. And I remember in one of my visits to a family, and this girl was so pretty, and I had a nice conversation with her. And I left feeling butterflies in my stomach, right? I left the family feeling, oh my goodness, why am I feeling this? But that same day, I went to the bank in the US and I had to do some transaction. And a beggar woman was outside the bank holding a carton, sign saying, please feed me, I'm hungry. I bent over and I gave her something. I looked into her eyes and I said, here, ma'am, here's something to help you. And I don't know if it was God saving my vocation, but when she looked into my eyes, this old woman who was begging, I felt the same butterflies in my stomach as when I was with that pretty girl that morning. So I went back to our house, religious house, and I go before Jesus and I said, why are you making me feel this? And the answer that came was, because I want you to be an instrument, a messenger of my love. And it will be as fulfilling if you're willing to take this road. So, meaning it is a sacrifice, but it's not going to leave you empty. You're going to feel just as loved in return by loving. And I'll never forget who that woman was. Well, I don't know her name, but that old woman will always stay with me as the church, right? The church that priests serve and look after. And I think over the years I've grown to love the church more. No. So that's one crisis moment. And I'm doing okay, I think. The second one was, now this is the harder one, was the night before ordination.
But you were at the finish line already.
I know. It was the last moment that you can actually say no. Like,
Walk away.
right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know what I was feeling, what I was thinking. Is this just, what is this? Then I finally pinned it down and I wrote it in my notebook. I am afraid because to be a priest is really far beyond my limitations. No. And I know myself. I know my tendencies, my weaknesses. Doesn't come out because priests tend to show their best form. But we know ourselves. We go to confession. We know what battles we're dealing with. And I actually was honest in my journal. I said, this is really beyond and above me. I don't know if I can live up to responsibility or expectation. So I was honest. I went to my spiritual director that night, knocked on his door, said, Father, it's the night when all my family and friends are waiting to see me
cold
the
feet
next
sa
day.
kasal.
Cold feet sa kasal. Yeah,
Wow.
cold feet sa kasal. And I came to Father and I said, what do I do? And he said to me, it's been 13 years. Who have you been looking at for 13 years? And I simply told him, Jesus. And he said, tomorrow, as you march and enter the church and be ordained, look at Jesus and you'll be fine. Again, like that old woman who was begging, I feel that this priest at that moment was there for me. I went through ordination, my eyes fixed on the Lord. And no joke, after that Mass, I felt this indescribable joy that this was the most loving thing I could ever do with my life. I might have been unworthy of it, but it certainly was the greatest act of love I could do. And I was so happy. And I said, no regrets. No regrets. Yeah, iyakan na lahat. But of course.
Sure.
But
I'm sure.
But yeah, those two moments of crisis. Sorry, Claire, mahabang sagot ko.
No.
That was the...
Out of curiosity though, were there, but it happens, right? I mean, I suppose it happens. Like, there are those who have walked away from it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it has happened. I've had companions older than me or younger than me who, not necessarily the day before, could be the week before,
Sure.
a month before. And that's why it's important to really have a spiritual director. I mean, even for marriage, to have a spiritual director, because they can give almost an objective view on what's been happening in your heart over time. Because fears come and go. Right? So it's been 5 years. And I thank God, I said, if not for the spiritual director,
Who are you serving now? What communities are you ministering to now?
the titas of Manaskin. No, I'm kidding.
No, you're not.
Of course not. Of course not. No. I am serving. Well, formally, I serve Ateneo de Manila and De La Salle as one of their part-time chaplains. In Ateneo, I'm part of a team of 6 chaplains in the college. So I go there 1 day a week and I help pastorally with their needs. I also moderate an org called RC Life. It's a faith-based org on campus. In La Salle, I'm one of two chaplains, serving the community of La Salle, also trying to focus on undergraduates, college students. So really my focus right now is college youth ministry. That's the heart. And of course, when they graduate, then they form the young adult ministry. So now I have a growing network of young adults who want to continue their faith journey. That occupies most of my time.
So what does a day in the life look like for
Oh.
a missionary priest? I'm sure a lot of people wonder, what do you do every day? And it seems like a lot.
Yes. Well, firstly is we have prayers, a total of about 4 hours of prayer a day, which we break up throughout the day. 1 hour here, 30 minutes here, your daily mass, of course, your rosary, etc. So you break that up. And then we travel a lot. So I travel a lot to Quezon City or Manila. And then once we're in our work zone, it depends whether you're giving a talk, you're talking to someone in spiritual direction, you're simply hanging out at a meal, or playing sports with them, or yeah. So that's should be an ordinary day, but then no day is ordinary, really. No. You have days where, Father, can you come to the hospital? Father, can you anoint this person? Father, this weekend, are you free to bless this place? Or the best ones are, Father, can you marry us? Oh, those are the best. So weddings are the highlight of my ministry, because it's like entering a fairy tale, So
Right.
you break off from your ordinary stressful time and you enter into really the beginning of a family, and the joys of that. So sorry, that's a tangent. I won't go deep into weddings. You can ask me later. Yeah, it's really availability for whatever the Lord sends you today. It's hard because sometimes you plan for something, you're all set, and then all you need is a phone call or a text, and you have to drop, right? And you have to go. Yes, so that's a daily thing. And then you have your vacation times, which is December, July, where we try to, and Holy Week, of course, we try to schedule more apostolic activities, outreaches, social service projects to bring.
That's vacation time?
I mean,
I was about to ask.
yeah, I used to think I could get 2 weeks of vacation, for example. But it's hard. You kind of have to find your weekends where you just disappear.
Right.
You visit your parents, you go with your community members to some hidden part of Luzon and just, right? So, yeah, that's vacation. But we try to use the students' breaks to take them to do some form of service. Because during the year, it's hard. There are deadlines and thesis papers. And,
Out of curiosity, though, and this is a little more serious, I guess. What was the pandemic like for you as a priest? I can imagine the priests were like SWAT teams going around in the pandemic or something. I mean, it was difficult for everybody, priests included. What was that like?
hard. It was hard. Because, at least for me, I grew old too fast. I began to deal with things I thought I would deal with when I reached my 60s. But themes like death, sickness, depression, sorrow, uh, isolation. And so for me, it was more that the psycho-emotional processing a priest has to do to be able to accompany someone else. Uh, I remember the first year of the pandemic, in a week, I'd have 3 death-related
Yeah.
stuff, things, uh, a lot of blessings on Zoom, entire families with COVID, near-death situations, some people who didn't make it through. I got COVID several times.
Early?
Oh my
Really?
gosh.
Yes.
Well, several.
Yeah.
What's several?
3.
Like 3. Okay, you're one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, one
I've
of
met
those.
people who had 3.
One of
3 times.
those, and it's scary. Yeah, it's scary because you're not in control. So yeah, the pandemic was a trying moment. Online activities boomed. So a lot of, it's funny, the priests called me the call center priest, no? Because we had a studio type of area, and I was there from 9 a.m. to 12 midnight, no? Parang call center.
Yeah.
Because I was there really the first 6 months of the pandemic.
Sure.
It was just call after call, blessing of scheduling, yourself not going crazy, eating your meals, going back up. So yeah, that was my
Yeah.
pandemic.
It was a rough time. Thankfully, it's not as rough. Still there, but
Not as much.
it's nice to hear also. Not nice, but nice is the wrong word. Very admirable, I can imagine, for the priests, with all the stuff they had to carry. And I think we take that for granted
Yeah.
as well, because we're all like, oh yeah, of course, the frontliners, the doctors, the medical people, and all that. But the priests, I can only imagine, had to work triple time during pandemic. So thank you, Father.
Yes, thank you.
I
Oh,
just want to take this
welcome.
opportunity to don't choke on your water, but thank you
Yeah.
for all you did during pandemic. I'm sure you did so much. Talaga.
Thank you. Thank you.
Priests go through so much every day. How do you not get burned out? Because I feel like professionals, we get burned out, and it's just like, 8 to 5. But how do priests keep it together?
That's a good question. Because I've reached those moments. How do we keep it together? Friends. I love my friends, and until today they always tell me, because Lou is my nickname. No? They always say, Lou, whenever you wanna come over, and just come over. No, so really, I think priests having friends who really look out for our good, help a lot. Of course, you have your own community inside. So being brothers in your community life helps as well. For me, so it's just an added bonus that I'm from here, so I have many friends
Oh,
around.
that's right. If you're abroad, it's another
harder.
story. Yeah.
Yeah, it's harder, but it's funny here, because everyone knows what you're doing, because everyone knows. Well,
Right.
so it's hard to disappear, but it's good because they look out for you, right? So yeah, priests, if they have good friends, that's very helpful. Family, my parents are so happy after 13 years of living away. They have me close, so my mom is always feeding me and asking me how I'm doing. I can always come home still. That's the comment. And I guess, Clara, the most important thing is I have to learn how to say no,
Ah, yes.
because the thing with priests is we're yes people, and then because if you say no, your reaction is, but you're a priest, you should be available for that, no? So learning to say no and knowing what's more important, right now. Right. My first year was hard because I said yes to everything. But now, priorities, right? The young people.
I'm so happy this podcast made it on your schedule then.
Oo
Thank
nga.
you.
Priorities. Well, really, the biggest motivation is I knew it was for the young people. So anything for young people, I do immediately. Like there's no discernment. When it becomes more like, can you bless an office? Can you? Then you have to think twice because there are other
Yeah.
priests who can
You can do that.
do that
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
So I guess for young people, this is on our list of questions.
Mm.
But what advice would you give them if they're trying to? Well, there's so many young people who are asking the big questions or making the biggest choices of their lives. I think when you're 17, 18, they ask you to make such a difficult decision of where to study, and after that there are more questions and more questions. What advice would you give them? It's a big question, sorry.
Oh, no. The best piece of the top priority advice.
Yes,
Sanam.
top priority.
What's the top priority that you would give them? Because there's so many things to. You can say so many. You can go on and on, really.
Yeah.
But what would be the first most important thing that they should put in their pocket with them as they make their decisions?
I would say get to know Jesus as a person, as a friend that will really enrich your experience of life. And however that relationship takes you, right? Because of what I've seen and experienced in my life journey and that of others in my journey, welcoming Jesus and having a relationship with him is never regretted. It will pull you through the most difficult moments, and it will encourage you in the most inspiring moments. So that's what I would say. And how do you do that? Reach out to people who have that relationship, and it will help you have that. So yun. Pwede ba yun?
That's No, and it's it. I feel great because that's kind of like what we try to tell also people in our community. Because we tell them, everyone's on their own journey. Sometimes you're close to Jesus, sometimes you're not. Sometimes it's ebbs and flows, and I guess it's just human. You get distracted by life, but the important thing is that you still try to keep him on your radar. and you still are open to that whole journey in the first place. And as long as you don't shut the doors to that, then you'll be okay. Of course, sometimes you'll have to lean on others, but generally you'll be fine. And that's how even for me, that's how I see things as well. I always have people coming up to me and say, I don't pray anymore. I don't. Well, are you still open to it? Are you still open to it? And they'll say, yeah, but maybe not now. I said, well, in your time, and then you'll find grace somehow, and it'll happen, right? As long as you don't shut yourself to that, I think you'll be okay. So thank you. We can end this here, don't you think?
I think
Yeah,
so.
I think so. Okay. So,
I guess.
with any other?
Thank you.
Thank you, Father
Father.
Lou.
You're welcome.
Thank
You're
you, Father
welcome.
Lou,
Thanks
for joining us
thank
on
you for
the
inviting.
Not the Last Word podcast. This is our very first. This is our maiden voyage. So hopefully, as the episodes roll by, it'll get better and better and really compelling for young people to listen to us. So all you young people out there, this is really for you. We're doing this for you, and for the not so young also. I think anyone will be interested in listening to today's conversation. But again, we'd like to thank Father Luis Lorenzo of the Legionaries of Christ. And this is the Not the Last Word podcast from Santuario de San Antonio Parish. My name is JJ,
And I'm Clar.
and we'd like to wish you a good day. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Not the Last Word, a Catholic podcast on finding one's path through stories from inspiring people. We plan to release one episode every month and to bring you new stories of people you may find interesting. If there's someone you'd like to be featured on this podcast, get in touch with us at NottheLastWordPodcast@gmail.com. This podcast is produced by the Santuario de San Antonio Parish's Social Communications Ministry with volunteers from the single young adults community. Special thanks to Marlon Guanizo, Gracie Castillo, Irvin Co, Sandy Suplido Adalem, JJ Yulo, and Father Rayu Galoy, OFM.